What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie. Going to do a deep dive into UFO's studio albums. Going to start with the 7 that they released in the 70s, and then I'll proceed on through the decades. Until about a couple months ago, never heard a UFO album in my life. I did a review of the Salentino Cuts, their covers album for my covers album series. I grew up in LA, listened to 2 of the greatest rock radio stations in the history of the world back in the 70s and 80s. I don't remember them playing many UFO songs. Like, I just don't. Pretty sure I had heard Lights Out, but that's the only song that in listening to these albums for the first time that I'm like, I think I know this song. I've heard this song. I do know I heard the live album, which I cannot remember the name of. The Strangers in the Night, is that what it is? The real famous one, right? The one that everybody says is one of the best rock albums, live albums of all time. I heard that on Desert Island Discs. Jim Loud would play 7 albums, sometimes double albums every Sunday. I try to listen as often as possible. I do remember hearing that because he hyped it up as one of the best live albums ever. So I know I had heard it. But that was it. Never did a deep dive, never went down that rabbit hole, none of those things. So I've been listening to a lot of UFO in the past couple months, and now I have opinions on them. So I'm going to rank them. Yeah, 7-1. All right, I'm not going to play any music. Just going to rank these albums. What is the Zappa connection? The Zappa connection. Schenker was in the Scorpions, their guitar player that joined for their 3rd album. Frank Zappa likes to quote, "Rock You Like a Hurricane" in one of his 80s tunes. So there's the Scorpions through Michael Schenker connection. All right, on to number 7. My number 7 is their second, the last one with Mick Bolton on guitar before Schenker joined the group for their 3rd one. It's UFO 2 Flying. A really indulgent space rock album. And I respect the album. I like what they're going for. We got a really long, 18-minute track. We got a really long, 26-minute track. We got a lot of space for the rhythm section and the guitarist to just kind of go out there. But I just don't find, I'm a fan of epic jams. Like, you play for 45 minutes and drop a plane in the band in the middle of a set, I'm all in. I'm all there. But I don't know if it's Bolton's guitar playing. I don't know if it's the rhythm section, what they're doing. I just don't find this stuff all that compelling or wanting to go back and listen to it. I think the sort of boiled down, economical, hard rock that UFO eventually landed on when Schenker joins the band is their strong suit. And I just thought this is a little too indulgent, a little too on the nose as far as space rock. First song, Silver Bird, which might be the best song on here, is about someone who lives on an island who sees an airplane for the first time and wants to get taken away into space. Starstorm, the title alone, you're clearly in space. 18 minutes of a slow, throbbing, sparse intro. Not much happens. A lot of these feel like rehearsal jams, studio jams that just got released. A lot of them feel like, hey, let's go into the studio and jam for 26 minutes and just release it. There are changes, there's lyrics, there's some song structures in here, but for the most part, it's not all that compelling. Silver Bird, the opening track, might be the best thing. Starstorm has its moments, kind of builds to a nice little dramatic conclusion. Prince Kajuku has this nice, okay groove. I think the Prince is from space based on the lyrics. The Coming of Prince Kajuku is a nice little instrumental vibe that kind of works well. And then the 26-minute fly-in. There's a lot that's going on in here, but there's some long solos. There's some part where we bring it down. There's a lot of guitar piercing noises. At times, it reminds me of Funkadelic's Maggot Brain, where it's pretty much the guitar is the centerpiece and everything is there just to support it. But I just don't think the stuff Bolton's doing on guitar is that interesting or that compelling. It goes on way too long. I respect the concept. I respect the ambition. I respect the confidence in themselves in dropping an hour-long space rock album with only 5 tracks on it. But it doesn't really excite me all that much. There's way too much other stuff to listen to. But, good job, guys. You tried. UFO 2, my number 7. My number 6 is their fifth, I believe. Yeah, the third with Shanker in. But also now I think there's a keyboardist that's been added officially to the group. We're definitely in sort of that hard rock era that, we're in the best five, even though this is number 6. Um, it's a really consistent album. I think it's strong. I kind of wish a piano player wasn't added. I was kind of happy with a little more bare bones, stick to guitar energy that UFO brings. I think those are their best parts. I think a lot of times on this album and a couple of the ones that follow, anytime there's too much piano or keyboard, it almost falls into this slightly proggy rockin' Elton John territory that just isn't as good as I think Elton John stuff. But I do think there are some really good songs on here. I just don't know if there's anything that for me is like truly, truly epic. And of the first run of Shanker 5 albums, I think this is the weakest of the first 5. Natural Thing opens, nice, good, heavy riff to start off, nice tone setter. I'm a Loser is actually pretty good. Got some acoustics, some slide guitar. Yeah, there's piano in here, energy. There's piano in here, but I think it's pretty good energy. I really like the guitar solo in here. The guitar solo in here the song is called I'm a Loser. I think it's a guitar solo that someone plays to kind of prove that they're not a loser. I like that energy. But there's a lot of piano action in here. I wish Shanker, just give Shanker more to do. I love his attack. I love his tone. I love his he can shred, but he never shreds just for the sake of shredding. Feels very purposeful in the notes he plays. And when he does shred, it always fits the song. So I like I'm a Loser. Can You Roll Her is a pretty good song. I like the drop after the keyboard intro. Nice driving rhythm. I feel like if you didn't have the keys and you had just leaned into the guitar a little more, it would just have a nice heavier sound. Nice shredding MS solo in here. That's pretty good. Nice just 3-minute burst of energy. Belladonna just has a really Styx ballady vibe, kind of like a Sweet Madam Blue or Crystal Ball. Doesn't really go anywhere. Not a big fan of this. Fades out. A lot of their songs fade out, which I'm not a big fan of. Let's just make them longer. Kind of relatively short albums. Reasons Love is a nice, good, high energy riff. Nice, good 70s rocker. Highway Lady, some really good, big rock energy. Feels like you're cruising pretty fast down the highway. Cool piano break in here, but it's relatively short. On with the Action, more of a slower mid-tempo groove that just goes on for way too long. It just feels like it overstays its welcome. A Fool in Love, kind of a nice, tight, poppy, catchy rocker. And then Martian Landscape, flirting with that Elton John vibe. You take Shanker's guitar off here, to me it sounds a little too much like Elton John, kind of a utopian lyrics thing. A Martian Landscape, I'll learn to lie in your arms. Great line. Not a bad album. I enjoyed listening to it. I just don't think it's as strong as the remaining 5 on this list. And I just don't think there's anything that's truly, truly great that jumps out at me, as I think something does on all the albums that would follow. Number 6, No Heavy Petting. Number 5 is their first album, their debut, UFO number 1. It sounds like a garage band playing space rock. Not garage rock, space rock, but it's from a garage. There's this sort of, I don't want to say amateurish quality to it, but there is this sort of there's a couple channels on YouTube which just play nothing but long lost psych albums or rock albums, bands you've only heard of if you've done some serious deep diving. Usually they only release 1 album or 2 albums, but this sounds like one of those albums I would find on one of those channels and that I would absolutely just love. Just sounds like a bunch of guys who can play their instruments relatively well. They're not gonna win any best guitar player, best bass player sort of prizes. The singer's pretty darn good. I like the singer who's the lead singer throughout, I think, all of UFO. But it's just, I don't know, there's just a nice raw quality to it. And the opening track, Unidentified Flying Object, an instrumental psych jam with some absolutely wow screaming guitar. Awesome opener. I'm a sucker for a good opener. If you can hook me with a strong opener, I will revisit this album more often than not. And I think the opener is fantastic. We got a couple covers on here. I think they all work. I think the band's bringing something pretty interesting to all this. Opening instrumental, I think, is fantastic. The second song is called Boogie. It's a boogie. One of the lyrics is, "Wanna boogie tonight?" Yeah, it's got this kind of swampy Doors feeling that I think really works well. Come On Everybody's a cover, flirting with some summertime blues energy in here. Great driving bass. Yeah, it's nice, good time boogie rock. Shake it about, a little more slower, has kind of almost a snap your finger swag to it. You was a brownie and I was a scout. Kind of like that line. Some nice guitar driven jamming in here. Melinda, very San Francisco late 60s vibe, slower, kind of a psych blues jam, nice sort of Marshall drum attack at one point, that kind of drives it, builds to a nice climax. Timothy, awesome bass driven opening, guitar kind of just spitting out some chords right there. This also flirts with sort of a summertime blues-esque sort of riff energy. Follow You Home, just some nice tight late 60s, early 70s rock. Kind of sounds like it could be like a Beefheart track, like an electric blues type Beefheart track. Just a nice little short burst of energy here. Traco People, love this. I think it's a great song. Nice slow groove, great bass action, really deep, distant sounding psych guitar energy that I think is fantastic. Who Do You Love flirts with that Who Do You Love energy throughout the song, like it's the cover. But we're not always in that Who Do You Love. We kind of start off with like this ballady slow energy. Then we kind of go into Who Do You Love proper. Then we come out of it with some nice guitar solos. It's just nicely in and out of that and doesn't just commit to that vibe the entire time, which I think makes it work. And then we close out with the song Evil, which has a nice little dun 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 Foxy Lady-esque little energy to it that I think works. I like this album. I think this is a fun listen. I think it's an enjoyable listen. I don't think they're breaking any barriers or nobody's going to win any prizes for best musicianship. But man, yeah, I'm all for the energy. I'm for the attitude. I think this album is a win. Their debut, UFO 1. Number 4, Michael Schenker's first album, Phenomenon, came out in 1974. 70s rock template. They're just playing some just classic 70s hard rock. In fact, I think these like 5 70s Schenker albums are just like sort of the definition of like 70s hard rock. 70s British hard rock, maybe. You got Deep Purple, you got UFO, not really breaking any norms or doing anything too outlandish, just delivering the goods with a solid, fun listen. I think pretty much my only complaint about this is we just need more Schenker. Seems like Schenker's being held back just a little bit. Maybe they didn't want to give the teenager too much room, but every time he plays, I think it's interesting. He's pushing them in the direction that they kind of would define their sound. There's some good stuff on here. A couple, I think, of their hits, some really fantastic songs. Just maybe sometimes a little too much balladry and just not as strong as the 3 that will follow. Too Young to Know, just kind of a classic melodic 70s hard rock. Crystal Light, the second song, just too ballady. Nice like arpeggiated chords to open it up, but just bring the aggression. Just bring the aggression. That's what I'm looking for. Doctor, really nice, mysterious, slow, kind of spacey intro and a nice drop with the guitar theme. Nice driving upbeat rock. Space Child, again, we kind of start off the slower ballady, kind of chill. Nice swaying groove that kind of gets established. Schenker eventually emerges out of this with a really nice, smooth solo and actually probably stretches out for the first time on this album and really kind of gets to flex a little more of his muscles. So that's a high point of the song. The absolutely awesome Rock Bottom, nice riff-driven groove rock, a little more playful than everything else on here. MS really gets to stretch out again. Yeah, an awesome, going back to a nice riff at the end, just dropping this awesome riff. Best song on the album so far, and I think showing the potential of what would be realized in the albums to come. Oh My, yeah, nice little mid-tempo rock with a super tasty Shanker solo. Time on My Hands, there's not too much of it. Acoustic-y ballad, nice melodic solo. Built for Comfort, nice kind of funky rock stomp that's pretty good. Some really nice Shanker licks in there. We get some tasteful shredding by Michael in the solo. It's only like 3 minutes long. It fades out, could be longer. Lipstick Traces is a ballad that kind of works. It kind of flirts with a sort of late Beatles kind of ballady vibe at times that is pretty cool. Slower, gentler vibe. It's an instrumental, but it's kind of super tasty. And then Queen of the Deep, which is this sort of starts off as a slow ballad and kind of builds with sort of a heavier vibe, some urgency to the vocals, some cool riffs in the middle, kind of a lot going on, kind of a little mini epic here to close out the album. The new sound works. You can feel that this band has a lot of potential. I do just think there's maybe a little bit of them like just holding back a little. Maybe they need to just get a little more aggressive and let Shanker just maybe drop some more fills in and licks there throughout each song, which would eventually happen. But yeah, solid album. That's my number 4, Phenomenon. My number 3 is their fourth, 1975's Force It, their second with Shanker. Just a much more confident version of that first album with songs that just hit harder, with solos that shred harder, that deliver more of an impact. Just a strong album from start to finish. Opens up with Let It Roll. Shanker's like bending notes. We got this nice tightly wound groove that we drop into. Just a lot more aggressive runs throughout the entire thing. Just like super tight, kind of funky. We get this really awesome sort of downshift in the middle of the song. This nice hard rock groove in the middle. Just an all-around great opener, an all-around great song. Shoot Shoot follows, nice bass-driven energy. We got some nice riffs that we drop throughout this thing, an awesome Shanker solo with some really concise, focused shredding. High Flyer, acoustic-y, soft, ballady, probably should have occurred later on the album. I feel like it's too early to have this. We do get a nice Shanker solo in here. The solo is really nice. I just think the song maybe needs to go farther in the back. It's more of a like, hey, we're winding down, let's drop this then type thing. Love, Lost Love. Shanker's taking the lead from the start. Just nice straight melodic hard rock. Out in the Street. A slower song with keys that builds, has dramatic moments. It kind of works. Got a really nice, awesome sort of riff drop about a minute into it. Feels like it's maybe a little more ambitious, though it's nowhere near what we would get with like prog bands, but it feels like a little bit of a development in songwriting. And I think the keys work on this song. I think they've found a way to make them work. And I don't know whose. It's not a full-time keyboardist that's playing at this because he would join on the next album, but nevertheless, the keys that are present do work. Mother Mary, nice harder, some really good riffs, nice heavy grooves in here, some nice licks, a little more swing to this. We get like some vocals and then a riff and then some vocals and a riff. It's just really nice energy to this song. Too Much of Nothing, nice dramatic opening. We got some like build, some release, some build, some release. A lot of these songs seem to just have a little more dynamics than the ones on the previous album. And I think it just makes them a little more compelling. We got a nice down section with some rolling drums and some bass. Dance Your Life Away, which we're flirting with the straight up dance groove, but it kind of works. A little bit of a pseudo funky energy in here. Super catchy main riff. Probably the most shredding solo yet by Shanker on these first two albums. Short, but effective. And it fades out. We need these songs not to fade out. Just let Michael play for longer and then just stop the song. And then we close out with The Kids / Between the Walls. The Kids is a kind of funky, really good rock energy type song, which I kind of almost think should be earlier on the album. Maybe switch this with High Flyer. And then we downshift about right before the 4-minute mark, and this nice kind of beautiful, gentle, ballady thing. I think Schenker composed the song with a nice Schenker solo in there. Really nice ending. We get some sort of celestial floating keys just kind of hovering there in the background. Strong ending to what is a really strong album. Yeah, Force It. My number 3, their number 4. My number 2 is their 6th, their 4th with Schenker, Lights Out, 1977. Yeah, just some really, 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 really good hard rock. I think this might have their all-time best song in the title track. The title track is just a awesome pre-Iron Maiden galloping hard rock groove-oriented beast. Great solo, awesome song, absolutely fantastic. My biggest complaint about this album is I just think it can be a little too acousticy at times. And I just like the third song, Try Me, which is this sort of piano-led ballad. Nice Schenker solo, but I'm just not up for the ballad energy in this. And that kind of hurts, I think, the early momentum of the album. And so that might be the biggest. There is a cover. The cover is fantastic. It's a cover of Love's Alone Again Or. Awesome Love cover. Yeah, I don't know. This is a fantastic album. And I also think the one that's number 1 is an equally fantastic album, but I don't think that has that one song that I'm just like, well, it does have that one song. I just like the other stuff better. Opens up with Too Hot to Handle. Awesome, great upbeat rock song with some really nice tight riffs. Just Another Suicide, which has this sort of acoustic energy, kind of a driving rock. It's got this sort of start-stop dynamic vibe at its parts throughout it. The piano in this, and maybe this is another reason why I have it at number 2, definitely gives it an Elton John flavor. And I like Elton John. I have no issues with Elton John. I just don't want that mixed in with my UFO hard rock. Try Me, put that at the back of the album. I'm okay with ballads being relegated to side 2. Lights Out, it's a winner. It's a home run. Maybe the best thing they did. Getting Ready, nice melodic UFO mid-tempo rock. Awesome cover of Alone Again Or. Electric Phase, nice slide guitar playing in here. Cool, sort of muted opening riff that goes into this super great groove. And then the closing Love to Love, which opens up with a boom gong. And then out of that gong, we get like strings and maybe some synths. Things kind of slowly start to build. It's kind of ballady vibe, but it closes with this really nice build and this really nice Schenker solo. So I'm going to put that in number 2. I think the one that I have at number 1 just rocks a little harder. And I as much as I admire them maybe incorporating more ballads or a use of like string-s synths or trying to do things that are a little more epic, I just want this band to rock. That really. And, I've only been listening to a couple months, and maybe in a couple years I'll grow to appreciate these softer things more. But at this point in time, feed me the hard rock energy. That's what I'm looking for. But yeah, this is my number 2. Good energy. Sometimes just a little too poppy for me. All right, on to number 1. And my number 1 is their 7th, their 5th and last in this era in the first Schenker era, 1978's Obsession. Other than one song on here, which is a piano ballad that once again gives me Elton John vibes, and a reprise of that piano ballad that doesn't quite give me the same Elton John vibes, but is nonetheless a reprise of the song is my least favorite. Every song on here, I think, is just an awesome dynamic rocker, and I just love the energy. The drums have this John Bonham big booming sound, this heavy stomp that I think is fantastic and does wonders for this band. The opening track, Only You Can Rock Me, great riff. We got some organ coming in here. It's a straight rocker. Halfway through the song, we drop into that riff, and the organ comes back. Great opener. And then the next song is just up there with Lights Out as far as one of my favorites I've heard so far. Pack It Up. Awesome, great Bonham-esque drum intro. Slide-infused riff. Really nice groove, some awesome Schenker fills throughout. The solo is absolutely fantastic. There's like some Zepp stomping energy in here that I think the band does incredibly well. Then we get this little like short little instrumental that it's folky, kind of ish, and acousticy, and kind of some dated synth sounds, but it's short and it just kind of, I don't know, it shouldn't work, but I think it does. It's called Arbery Hill. But then after that, we go into Ain't No Baby, which has this really nice aggressive stomp, some wailing Schenker guitar energy. It works really well after the short instrumental. It's got a nice, some gritty solos throughout. It also has that sort of Led Zeppelin, maybe a little Queens of the Stone Age, maybe a little Deep Purple type hard rock stomping energy. Just another fantastic song. Then we get Looking Out for Number One, the piano ballad I don't really care for. Then we get Hot and Ready, which just opens up with this nasty run and this nasty riff by Schenker. Absolutely fantastic. The sound of it almost has this, I can't even, it's a Deep Purple riff that it sounds like. I can never remember what Deep Purple riff it is, but like an early 70s Deep Purple riff. I love the energy. I love the attack. This song is hot. It is ready. Great, awesome song. Then we get this song called Cherry, which has this really cool, like low key. I don't know if it's really low guitar notes or really somewhat higher bass notes, but it kind of reminds me of some of the Psych intros to like the Claypool Lennon Delirium. They have a couple of these really kind of low key Psych songs that start with just this really like, just really down in the mix bass grooves. And this kind of reminds me of that. And then it kind of builds into this really cool kind of laid back groove that is a little bit different than everything else they do. Cherry is a fantastic song. That's followed by You Don't Fool Me. Nice heavy stomp. Schenker is just going off. Just absolutely amazing. The first solo he drops in this thing, it's like, we got some blues energy in there. It's super tasty, kind of nasty. Like, I really think, like, this is Schenker's last album. He would leave the band after this. Apparently everybody wasn't getting along. I think he's channeling whatever animosity he's feeling or whatever his frustration he's feeling through these solos. Because I think these solos are just some of the best he's dropped. We get that Looking Out for Number One reprise, which I'm not a big fan of. But then the last two songs, One More for the Rodeo, nice grid rock groove, kind of strange, fun lyrics. Not really sure what they're about, but they kind of paint a little picture of some odd character in some odd places. And then we have the closing, Born to Lose, little slower number with some like dramatic drops to kind of build the intensity. Super, super tasty Schenker solo to close out the album. I understand they have to do like these slower songs that like, you know, bands just, they need that. I don't think the Looking Out for Number One works. I do think Born to Lose works. It has that slower energy that kind of builds nicely. And if you put it at the end of the album, all right, it kind of works for me a little more because I'm not going to be all revved up and amped up when it's done and, you know, need to go out and mow the lawn or something like that. So, yeah. This and, I mean, really, all the Schenker albums are absolutely fantastic. But for me, for what I'm looking for the more aggressive energy and not more sort of ambitious, let's do a little bit of everything energy, Obsession is my number one UFO album of the 70s. That is what the list looks like in typewritten form. Really, other than that one in number 7, which I think is just a little too indulgent, I just don't think they're playing like demands repeat listens. I understand the attraction of that album, especially since it came out in the early 70s. I understand it was popular among people who like to like indulge in psychedelics and then get lost in their music. That is a perfect album to do that in. I just don't think it bears repeat listens if you're not going to do that. Other than that, the Schenker albums are all great. I think their first album is a really fun listen. So yeah, this was a really successful decade. I am going to drop, before I do the 80s albums, I'm going to drop a review of that live album that everybody says is one of the best ever. I'm really looking forward to talking about that. And then we'll make our way through the other decades and see what UFO has in store for us. That's all I got. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts on these albums. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know all the stuff I missed out on talking about or mistakes I made. I'm new to this band, but so far, really, really enjoying getting into them. It's that hard rock dose of 70s hard rock dose of adrenaline that I need. I'm happy I got it. My life is better for it. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.